Welcome back to Streaming Media 2025 at the Fairmont Miramar in sunny Santa Monica, California. We're here with Rebecca Avery. Rebecca, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've got going on.
Yeah, so I am the founder and principal of a consulting company called Integration Therapy. It is called that for two reasons. Integration because networks are complex things, streaming networks doubly so, I believe. And therapy because I know how it feels to try to scale a company when things aren't working right.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit about what you're working on now.
So what I'm working on now is mainly with streaming networks who are either getting ready for a major transformation, which a lot of broadcast networks or streaming arms are, or they're experiencing hypergrowth, going out into new markets or expanding their content libraries. And most of the work that I have been called in to do is about changing from many to one, really streamlining, calling it what I call the content superhighway system.
So tell me a little bit more about that.
So there are actually several different things that you need to look at when you are changing out what feels like something that's just tech ops or tech. The first being strategic alignment. So industry benchmarks actually put lack of strategic alignment at a 30% revenue leak for many companies. So just helping them really understand what they're trying to do and why they're trying to do it, what's efficient. Metadata translation. So my sweet spot is metadata. I am the chair of the metadata working group for the SVTA. It's my first love. And then also just team development and then technology integration as part of that. But when you change one of those five things, it affects the other four. So that's part of what I'm there to oversee.
So is it sort of akin to what we hear about like with our energy grid, where the transmission technology is out of date and needs to be adapted because we're losing
because it
dollars,
puts too much pressure somewhere
right?
else.
And you put pressure here, this other system breaks. And so it's kind of akin to that.
And kind of where most streaming companies have been in the past is one of two paths. And one is either we're just going to change our metadata because we just need to do a heat-seeking missile targeted fix, or we're going to call in McKinsey and we're going to do a gigantic transformation that's very expensive and very disruptive to the company. I'm here to provide that middle path and to start as a heat-seeking missile and then pull back for a second. If you want to move fast, start slow and say, when we make these changes, here's the things it's going to affect and here's how we can mitigate that risk and not lose the pace that your company needs to function at.
It sounds like one of the things I try to teach my kids all the time, right, is if you want to go fast, go slow. So take a minute, evaluate, figure out what the best bang for your buck is, and then take action on that. And then if you're doing that consistently, you're going to be getting better results quicker rather than just trying to throw everything at the wall and then seeing what sticks.
And I think that's more important now as technology life cycles are getting short and as there's more and more levers for streaming companies to pull to go for monetization because they want to pivot so much. If you're not stable at your core, you're just going to start falling apart.
Gotcha. So tell me a little bit about your experience at the show. I was happy to sit in on your first debate panel, which I thought was an amazing format, and you and your partners killed it. And, so what's been your experience of the show? What are the things you've enjoyed talking about?
I've been on so many panels. Honestly, going into this show, I thought that it was going to be more of a tech conference. As you know, the chair is the great Andy Beach.
Correct.
I kept telling Andy, I was like, well, I'm not tech. And he's like, that's great. So I've been countering a lot of that. I am actually going to be in a total of 4 panels, including that debate. And I have been pleased to find out that they are all about all kinds of different things. And so it's becoming a more holistic conversation, which is exactly my wheelhouse.
Well, and I think that's one of the things Andy brings to his chairmanship here, right, is that he sees all the pieces and parts. It's not just tech, it's the people on the ground, it's the ad tech, it's not just the tech, but the thinking about how this all gets done and how it gets pushed out into the infrastructure that we're all trying to figure out.
Yeah, and this whole community has been making AI such a central part of the conversation, and I've really enjoyed the talks, the panels that I've been in and the panels that I've gotten to watch about how that conversation is starting to shift and say, okay, we understand that we're in the age of AI. Given that context, where are we with everything else? What do we want to become?
Talk to me a little bit about your perspective on AI in the space.
I think it is a huge game changer. Like I said, my first love is metadata, and that is one of the first places that AI has really gone in. I recently published an article that says we talk too much about AI because we've been kind of obsessed with, well, what is AI? How does it work? What are its limitations? And I think as a result, a lot of the companies that are developing AI for the media space are lacking a little bit clarity on what they need. And I've been pulling up actually localization as an example. That is one of the few places that media immediately went, oh, we need to localize, not just translate, but we need to be able to push out in Mino a week after we push out in Europe. And AI has done a really amazing job stepping up to that challenge. And now I am, lucky enough to be part of the intelligentsia who's defining what all of the next things are for discoverability, rights management, and all the places AI can go.
Well, and I think it's not so much that we're talking about AI too much, it's that maybe we're talking about the wrong applications, because the focus is on Gen AI and the creative piece, and really the immediate bang for the buck is on these things like metadata acquisition, cataloging, localization, getting these things that both make the cost of creation lower and also create and expand markets that are less sexy AI, but they're integral to success. Would you agree with that?
I definitely agree with that. I remember the days when metadata wasn't sexy, and it's finally getting its time in the sun. It just won an Emmy. So that's great. I would also argue that we've been looking kind of at the wrong lens.
Okay.
I have been working with giant enterprise companies as well as smaller startups, and something that really happened probably starting about 3 years ago when ChatGPT was about to release and people were kind of on the edge of their seat. The conversation was, how can AI help solve my problems? And to me, that sounds like, how can that monkey wrench help fix my Jeep? And I really think that we can flip the conversation and say, here's what I want. Here's how I want to optimize my operation. And because in the age of AI, and again, moving it into context a little bit more than the central focus, as this conference has done a great job doing, we do live in a place where the tech life cycles are very short. And if you can imagine it, maybe it's not possible today, but it's certainly worth having a conversation. So it's like we have these green pastures of saying, how do we want to monetize? What do we want the experience to be? How are we going to reshape our UI in a way that doesn't just look like a recycled version of somebody else's, and make it interactive and do something special, and really challenge technology rather than just saying, well, what's been developed today? Well, it doesn't matter, because by the time you learn it, it's going to be in a new generation anyway.
I think that's an interesting perspective. So as you're trying to figure out what the problem is in the first place or what the solutions might be, you may define something that you can't solve right now, but you put it on the board and say, this is somewhere down the line, we're going to get some kind of solution.
Yeah.
Right. So you're not trying to solve a problem that exists, but there's not a monkey wrench to apply to it yet.
I think to solve the problems that exist, to understand how to prioritize those, you should be looking at your long term. What do you want to do in 3 years or 5 years? Anything beyond 5 years is very tricky right now. But you can, you should be looking at, where do we want to be? And I think that there is a huge horse race right now of all these AI companies that are trying to win. I think media has the potential to be a very influential customer of AI. And I think that if there is enough clarity of vision in this industry, we can actually help impact how AI gets developed and for whom.
I couldn't agree more. I think about that Gretzky quote a lot, skate where the puck is going. And I kind of paraphrase it like, know where the puck should go and put it in play there and then skate to it. That's kind of the thinking that I think people are starting to adopt around this, right? Let's figure out where we want to go. And let's make sure we put the things in place so that the person Gretzky's going to pass to is going to be ready there to pick it up and shoot on goal.
The media industry, I think, in the last decade or more has been at a huge disadvantage, honestly. And I think it's a really unfair disadvantage because it's a very long established industry and things have been done a certain way. And it has a very rich history. We've influenced Western culture, we've influenced Eastern culture in some cases. And then suddenly we woke up one day and said, oh, we all need to be technologists now. And that is a huge, huge burden. But I think you're absolutely right, what you're saying about look where the puck should be. I think that is our chance to finally become the shepherds of our own future rather than having to react to what everybody else is doing.
Well, I think that's one of the interesting things about the work you're doing. You're not coming in it from a technology side our technology lens to begin with. You're coming in it from a human lens to, how is this going to benefit the person in the pipeline that's doing the job? How's it going to affect the business bottom line? How's it going to affect the audience and the creation of more and better content, or getting that access? And one of the things that near and dear to my heart is the idea of ethical applications.
Yeah.
Could you speak a little bit to that?
I mean, there's a couple of different ways for that, right? And I think that there's a lot of different ways that companies can win in more than one way. So there's ethical applications from the point of view of how are you treating your internal team when you are putting in AI? And I think that there is actually a very neutral way to do it. There's something that I always say when I'm talking about accessibility panels is, if you're not a good person, don't worry. I probably have a fiscal reason for you to do the right thing anyway.
Exactly. I love that. I love that so much, because doing the right thing is a benefit in and of itself.
Right.
And particularly when you think about all this generative AI stuff, if you're doing the right thing and you're bringing things on-prem and you're doing things where you're building a IP chain, that may cost you some money and it might be doing the right thing, but it also protects you in the long run from legal challenges and other things.
It does.
So it's
and it
like the
protects
right
you
thing
from
is the right thing for a
overlaying
reason.
off and then realizing your AI can't do what you thought it could do,
Right.
and accumulating a huge amount of data debt, and then having to rehire back people, which honestly is a thing that's kind of happening in some ways.
Yeah.
And it's just creating more confusion. There's huge cost overhead to having that kind of employee churn.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the brain drain, because now you got to bring people back up to speed or bring new people on who maybe don't have that institutional
There's also
knowledge.
the trust factor. Teams just don't operate that well. There is a term called organizational trauma that happens whenever there's layoffs, and the people, like, there's been this new thing, of I've been affected by the layoff, and my first thought is always, no, man, you got laid off, and the people left behind were affected by the layoff. Like, this hurts everybody.
Oh yeah.
And it affects the trust of the teams, the quality of your product, invariably sinks. It affects the trust of your audience. It impacts the economy. Like, the ripple effects are almost
It affects the
nonstop.
quality of the experience. It affects every piece of the business. Yeah, amazing insight. So what have you seen at the show? What are the kind of the themes you've seen so far that really stand out to you?
Mostly what I've seen, and like I was in 2 panels yesterday that were back-to-back panels, and I thought I was going to have an identity crisis, because the first one is C2PA, which was a very technical panel, and then the second one was monetizing niche content, which was much more of a partnership, sponsorship, business development conversation. But both of them really carried the theme of, why does this matter? Why should we care? What do we want the audience to walk away with? Like, what are the actual tactile things that we're talking about and how they affect our community? None of it was an esoteric conversation.
It's boots on the ground. Let's get it done. Let's make this thing work, but do it in the right way that it benefits everybody.
And 0 to 1 conversations, which are fantastic, which we talked about a lot in like the niche content. So you're a content creator, and like, how do you start? What are you doing? And I don't think that gets addressed enough.
Well, that's actually one of the things I was surprised to see kind of as one of the through lines here, right, is the focus on the content creator, and even YouTube and Instagram and TikTok being kind of the farm team. Obviously Mr. Beast is the great example who comes through YouTube, and now he's got an Amazon show. And just identifying that and helping that early startup, that beginning content creator understand the data pipeline, understand the things they need to do to be taken seriously. And I always think about AI as a force multiplier, right? It makes a smaller person be able to play on a bigger field. And that seems to be a theme that I've seen here that I was actually kind of surprised to see. Would you agree with that?
I'd been really eyeing the schedule, and so I was hoping it was going to come through as much as it kind of seemed like it was hinting towards. And I've spoken to Andy about it. I'm really happy to see it, because I think the creators have sort of seen themselves as a separate community, and they shouldn't. And I think that they see themselves as a separate community for good reason. I've spoken to some creators this year as I'm maturing my business model and figuring out, like, what could I do that would work to sort of help these guys get from 0 to 1, because I've done half a dozen early stage startups.
Right.
And honestly, the first response I usually get from them is, we're not going to buy our $99 class. Not trying to sell you one, but I think that they're I think that they're cynical for really good reasons. And that was some of the advice that I gave to the audience yesterday is if you are trying to start out, you can do like when I started my company, I'm really bad at B2B marketing. I found B2B marketing executives on LinkedIn and wrote them and said, hey, I can't afford to be your client right now, but do you have 30 minutes for me? I promise, I'll be well structured. 80% of them said yes and just gave me a courtesy call and I can give them an update and it's just somebody else to kind of cheer me on. So I hope that they accept that invitation.
Well, and it's an opportunity then to kind of in a soft way introduce your skill set and how you can present yourself and be an asset to them down the road too.
Yeah, and it's signal from the market, right? I've been able to talk to small, medium, and large, more established companies, and they can say, this is what we need, this is how you might fit in with us. I haven't been able to do that with the creators. And so you're right, like being able to mentor them a little bit benefits me as well because I can start to understand how we might be able to have a professional
relationship. It's kind of be of service and the rest will kind of take care of itself. And I think that's where, from the creator's perspective, that disconnect maybe has been, right? Not that, how do you get into play? And one of the things I think is really interesting, I'd be interested in your take on this, is you look at Mr. Beast and what he's done, and Amazon wasn't the end goal. It was a great additive piece to his overall brand. But I think I see creators more and more seeing that they can be their own network, they can be their own studio, and then partner up with the bigger people to expand their footprint, not necessarily because that's the end goal, to be on the Amazon roster or the Netflix roster.
Well, and they're coming in with so much more intention now, right? 10 years ago, they were coming in because YouTube was fun and they were just going to give it a try and their friends will watch it and they'll see if they can get sticky. And now they're coming in and they have a business concept. And so I think that's why it's a really good time for somebody like me to try to engage with them, even if it's just to get that signal and start establishing that relationship and see what we can do that benefits all of us, just here's a better way to structure your folders on Google Drive.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the things I've really appreciated about this show is, you go to IBC, you go to NEB, it's kind of a meat grinder. It's a good thing, you got to do it.
Yeah.
But here you get more of the stand-up conversations in the hallway, conversation over a drink, at the lunch table, things like that. And it's an opportunity to build better connections.
I have not spent 30 consecutive seconds awkwardly pretending to check my phone because I don't know where to go next or who to talk to.
Yeah,
I have to say happens to me every year at NAB.
Yeah, and or you're constantly running from place to place. You have some relationship capital that gets spent or squandered because you can't meet everybody you want to meet at these larger events.
It's way more authentic because it's a little bit smaller. It's a little bit more curated. I mean, it's dinners. It's taking walks around the block.
Okay.
It's better.
So just before we wrap up, what's the one big trend you think people should be looking out for in the next 18 months?
Personalization. I think everybody is interested in personalization. I think that you could sort of split it in a couple of different ways. Discovery is such a huge thing. That's a panel that I'm speaking on a little bit later today. Obviously, Cineverse has been heads down, so we're looking forward to hearing from Tony. And I think there is also the idea of personalization of content as it gets created in the supply chain for different markets. AI is helping to repackage and reproduce pieces of content, and that is going to be a much bigger deal over the next 18 months.
It feels like it's a much more productive and inherently beneficial use of metadata about the audience than maybe we've seen from some of the social platforms.
Yeah, we have the ability now, especially for things like discovery, to have not just tags, but you can go very, very deep on semantic reasoning and why data is that way. And the only way that's going to become not just more data is a very enhanced market research. You really need to understand not just who the audience is, but why they're watching, what else they're watching, and how they're thinking when they enter those search terms.
Well, and you also then have the opportunity. Are you familiar with the 1,000 fans theory?
No.
It comes from punk rock, and punk bands used to say, if we can get 1,000 fans, we can survive as a band. Meaning, because you get 1,000 raving fans, they love your work, they buy every album. That's all you need to have a career. And I think that's one of the interesting ideas that I think will evolve from this personalization and customization. If the creators are able to narrow in and find who their niche audience is, They can build on 1,000 and go to 2,000.
I love that, because
And-
retention's kind of king, right? You
Yep.
can have high engagement numbers, but if you have huge churn,
Yep.
the advertisers aren't as interested in you. But yeah, you
That's
can
one
get
of the
1,000
advantages.
loyal fans.
That's one of the things that makes metadata sexy.
Yeah.
Well, this has been so great. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us.
Yeah, thank you.
My name's Doug Daulton. This has been Rebecca Avery with Integration Therapy. Thanks so much for being with us today, and we'll see you on down the road.